Ted Bundy?
I've never spoken to anybody about this.
30 years after he was executed, notorious serial killer Ted Bundy is having his story retold in documentaries and crime series this year. The Netflix original Conversations with a Killer, the Ted Bundy tapes, uses video and audio recordings of interviews with Bundy to get inside his mind.
January 24th, 1989. Florida State Prison, Stark, Florida. Behind thick glass, witnesses sat in silence as prison staff prepared the electric chair. Florida's old Sparky. A man was brought in, restrained at the wrists and ankles, and guided into position. His name was Theodore Robert Bundy. By then, Bundy was already one of the most infamous killers in modern American history. A man linked to a multi-state trail of abductions, sexual violence, and murder that terrorized the United States in the 1970s. Women disappeared from college towns, highways, and quiet neighborhoods. Some were found months later. Others were never found at all. Bundy didn't look like what people expected a predator to look like. He could appear polite, educated, trustworthy, and that was part of what made him so dangerous. He used normalcy to get close and confidence to lower defenses. After years of investigations, escapes, trials, and appeals, the case ended here, not with life in prison, but with a death sentence carried out in a Florida execution chamber. Bundy would later confess to around 30 murders, and investigators have long believed the real number may never be fully known. This is the story of Ted Bundy, the crimes, the manhunt, the courtroom spectacle, and the path that led to his final morning in Florida. And before this story ends, we'll examine what happened in his last hours, the final calls, the final requests, and the moment the state carried out the sentence. Long before his name became synonymous with fear, Ted Bundy lived an ordinary life, at least on the surface. He was born Theodore Robert Cowell on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. For the first years of his life, Bundy was told that his mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, was actually his sister, and that his grandparents were his parents. The truth about his identity wouldn't be revealed to him until later, creating a fracture in his sense of self that followed him for years. Bundy grew up quiet and observant. He was described as intelligent but socially awkward. As a child, he struggled to form close friendships. He was sensitive to rejection and deeply concerned with how others perceived him. In his teenage years, Bundy learned the truth about his birth. Around the same time, his mother remarried and moved the family to Washington State. Bundy took the last name Bundy, trying to leave his earlier life behind. But beneath the effort to appear normal, something darker was taking shape. As a teenager, Bundy developed a fixation on violence and control. He later admitted to consuming violent pornography and engaging in voyeuristic behavior, prowling neighborhoods at night, peering into windows, imagining power over strangers who never knew he was there. In college, Bundy studied psychology. He was articulate, ambitious, and capable of charm when it served him. He volunteered for political campaigns. He worked at a suicide hotline. To classmates and co-workers, he appeared driven and polite, even compassionate. But behind closed doors, Bundy harbored resentment. He felt inferior. He believed the world owed him something, and that belief would eventually turn into rage. By the early 1970s, Ted Bundy had perfected the image he wanted others to see: a clean-cut law student with a future. What no one could see was how close he was to crossing a line, one that would leave a permanent scar on American criminal history. In early 1974, young women began vanishing in the Pacific Northwest. At first, there was no obvious pattern. The disappearances were spread across Washington and Oregon, reported by different families in different cities. Some victims were college students, others were teenagers. They left dorms, beaches, libraries, and were never seen again. Then witnesses began mentioning the same detail: a man named Ted. He was described as polite and unthreatening. Sometimes his arm was in a cast. Sometimes he walked with a limp. He asked for help carrying books, loading a sailboat, retrieving something from his car. And when women agreed to help, they vanished. One of the first confirmed victims was Linda Ann Healy, a University of Washington student who disappeared from her basement bedroom in January 1974. There were signs of a struggle, but no body, just absence. More names followed: Donna Gail Manson, Susan Rancourt, Roberta Kathleen Parks, Brenda Carroll Ball. The cases began to overlap. Similar appearances, similar locations, similar outcomes. Bundy was hunting. He targeted women who fit a specific type: young, white, long, dark hair, often parted in the middle. Investigators would later learn this was no coincidence. It mirrored the appearance of a woman Bundy once loved and believed had rejected him. By the summer of 1974, fear spread across college campuses. Women stopped walking alone. Parents demanded answers. Police departments formed task forces, but coordination between states was limited, and Bundy stayed ahead of them. He disposed of bodies in remote forested areas, places difficult to search, even harder to connect. Some victims were assaulted after death. Bundy later admitted he returned to certain sites again and again, reliving the crimes. Despite mounting suspicion, Bundy blended in. He attended classes. He dated. He worked. He even volunteered at a crisis hotline, listening to callers talk about despair while he was actively creating it. By the end of 1974, the list of missing women had grown, and investigators were finally closing in on one name: Ted Bundy. But proving it would take time, and while police worked quietly behind the scenes, Bundy was preparing to leave Washington, carrying his violence with him. By late 1974, investigators in Washington had begun to notice a pattern they could no longer ignore. Multiple witnesses had described the same man, Ted, driving a tan Volkswagen Beetle. He was seen near abduction sites. He asked for help. He disappeared at the same moments the women did. One name surfaced repeatedly: Ted Bundy. Bundy was already known to police, though not as a suspect in murder. He had been pulled over before. He had a criminal record for minor offenses, and people close to him had begun to feel something was wrong. One of them was Elizabeth Kloepfer, also known as Liz Kloepfer or Liz Kloepfer Bundy, the woman Bundy was dating at the time. She noticed his late-night absences, his sudden mood shifts, his fascination with news reports about missing women. After seeing a composite sketch released by police, Liz made a decision that would change everything. She called the police tip line. She gave them Bundy's name, his car description, his habits, his locations. Bundy was questioned. He denied everything. At the time, investigators lacked physical evidence. No bodies had been conclusively linked to him. No forensic technology existed to place him at crime scenes with certainty. And Bundy, calm, articulate, cooperative, did not look like a serial killer. Still, police placed him under surveillance. They searched his Volkswagen. Inside, they found handcuffs, a crowbar, a ski mask, and other suspicious items, but nothing definitive. Nothing that could hold up in court. Bundy knew the pressure was building. In 1974, he made a critical decision. He left Washington. He moved south, enrolling in law school in Utah, believing a new location would mean a clean slate. It didn't. Instead, the killings followed him. In Utah, young women continued to disappear under familiar circumstances. One of them, Carol DeRanch, survived an attempted abduction in November 1974. She later identified Bundy in a lineup, one of the first victims to do so. For the first time, Bundy was no longer just a name. He was a defendant. And as the legal system began closing in, Bundy made another decision, one that shocked investigators and the public alike. On August 16, 1975, Ted Bundy was arrested in Salt Lake City, Utah. This time, police believed they had enough to hold him. Bundy was charged with the kidnapping of Carol DeRanch, the woman who had survived his attack and lived to identify him. Her testimony was calm, precise, and devastating. She described how Bundy had posed as a police officer, how he tried to handcuff her, and how she fought her way out of his car. In court, Bundy acted confident, almost relaxed. He believed he was smarter than the system. But in March 1976, a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to 1 to 15 years in prison. For most defendants, that would have been the end. For Ted Bundy, it was only the beginning. Bundy was transferred to Colorado, where he faced additional charges connected to the murder of Corinne Campbell, who had vanished from a hotel in Aspen. Determined to control his own fate, Bundy insisted on acting as his own attorney, a risky move that allowed him unusual freedom. On June 7, 1977, during a preliminary hearing, Bundy asked to use the law library. Then he ran. He slipped out of a second-story courthouse window and disappeared into the Colorado mountains. For 6 days, Bundy was free. He was captured, returned to custody, and placed in a more secure jail. But Bundy wasn't finished. On December 30, 1977, he executed a second escape, crawling through a hole he had cut in the ceiling of his cell and slipping out while guards were distracted. This time he didn't stay nearby. He fled west, then south. By the time authorities realized he was gone, Ted Bundy was already heading toward Florida. And there, in early 1978, his violence escalated to a level that stunned the nation. In January 1978, Ted Bundy arrived in Tallahassee, Florida. He was a fugitive, one of the most wanted men in the country, but few people there knew his face. He used aliases. He blended in, and for a short time, he remained unnoticed. That didn't last. On the night of January 15, 1978, Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University. What happened inside unfolded in less than 15 minutes. Bundy moved room to room, attacking women as they slept. He beat them with a piece of firewood. He strangled them. He mutilated them. Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy were killed. Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner survived, severely injured but alive. Before dawn, Bundy was gone. Just hours later, he attacked again, abducting and murdering Kimberly Leach, a 12-year-old girl from a middle school in Lake City, Florida. The escalation shocked investigators. The randomness, the speed, the brutality. Florida was now dealing with a killer who was no longer careful, a man unraveling under pressure. Witnesses near the Chi Omega house described a man leaving the scene. One survivor later identified Bundy. Physical evidence, bite mark testimony, footprints, fibers, began tying him directly to the crimes. On February 15, 1978, Bundy was arrested again, this time in Pensacola, after a routine traffic stop. There would be no more escapes. The trial that followed became a national spectacle. Cameras filled the courtroom. Bundy acted as his own lawyer, questioning witnesses, objecting to testimony, and attempting to control the narrative. It didn't work. In July 1979, Bundy was found guilty of the murders of Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. He was sentenced to death. Later, he would receive additional death sentences for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Ted Bundy was sent to Florida's death row. But even then, the story wasn't over. Ted Bundy arrived on Florida's death row in 1979, condemned to die, but still determined to control the story. For nearly a decade, Bundy filed appeal after appeal. Each motion delayed his execution. Each hearing reopened wounds for the families of his victims. And each delay kept Bundy in the public eye, exactly where he wanted to be. Behind bars, Bundy began to change his strategy. As his execution dates approached, he started to talk. He offered partial confessions to investigators, hinting at details only the killer would know, but rarely giving full closure. He spoke in the third person. He avoided names. He negotiated information in exchange for time. Bundy claimed responsibility for around 30 murders across 7 states. Law enforcement officials believe the real number may be higher, but many victims were never recovered, and some cases remain permanently unresolved. As the years passed, public sympathy evaporated. Protesters gathered outside the prison, not to save Bundy's life, but to demand it end. When execution dates were postponed, crowds cheered in frustration. Inside the prison, Bundy's behavior became erratic. He sought media interviews. He contacted religious figures. He made last-minute legal arguments, all unsuccessful. On January 23, 1989, Bundy made his final appeals. They were denied. In the early hours of January 24th, guards informed him that the execution would proceed. Bundy made final phone calls. He ate his last meal. He was offered a chance to make a final statement. He declined. At 7:16 a.m., Ted Bundy was strapped into Florida's electric chair. Moments later, the switch was thrown. Ted Bundy was pronounced dead at 7:16 a.m., ending one of the most disturbing criminal cases in American history. Outside the prison, crowds celebrated. Cars honked. Some people sang. Others held signs bearing the names of victims, finally acknowledged, finally remembered. The state had carried out the sentence. But the damage Bundy left behind, the families, the unanswered questions, the lives cut short, could not be undone. This was the end of Ted Bundy, and the permanent record of his crimes. Ted Bundy's execution closed the legal case, but it did not close the story. In the days that followed his death, investigators continued sorting through decades of files, tips, and partial confessions. Some families finally received answers, others never did. For many victims, there were no remains to bury, no certainty about what happened in their final moments. Bundy left behind more questions than conclusions. Law enforcement agencies across the country re-examined unsolved cases once thought unconnected. Some were quietly closed. Others remain open to this day, marked by a single line in a file. Possible Bundy victim. His crimes forced permanent changes in American policing. Agencies began sharing information across state lines. Behavioral profiling gained legitimacy. Public awareness about predatory behavior, especially the danger of perceived normalcy, increased dramatically. But the cultural impact came at a cost. Bundy became a cautionary example of how charisma can mask violence, and how easily evil can hide in plain sight. At the same time, his notoriety sparked debates that continue today, about media attention, about the death penalty, and about whether justice can ever truly balance loss. For the families of the victims, Bundy was never a mystery or a headline. He was absence, a daughter who never came home, a sister who never graduated, a life interrupted without warning. Ted Bundy is often remembered for what he did, but what matters most are the lives he took, and the responsibility to remember them, not him. This is the crime record, and this case is closed, but never forgotten. Ted Bundy's case is now closed in the legal sense, but it remains active in American memory. His name appears in textbooks, court records, and criminal psychology studies, not as a figure to be admired, but as a warning. The files show how manipulation, mobility, and delayed coordination allowed violence to continue unchecked. They also show the limits of justice, sentences carried out, yet losses never restored. What survives is not Bundy himself, but the lessons drawn from the case, about vigilance, accountability, and the cost of ignoring early warning signs. This is the record that endures. The Bundy case reshaped how America responds to serial violence. Investigators learned that jurisdictional borders protect offenders more than victims when agencies fail to communicate. Courts reconsidered the risks of self-representation after Bundy exploited the system to escape custody twice. Public awareness shifted as well. People began to understand that danger does not always look threatening, and that trust can be manipulated. Today, Bundy's name appears in training manuals, not headlines. His case is studied to prevent repetition, not to preserve notoriety. The purpose of the record is no longer to recount his crimes, but to ensure they are never repeated. Before we end, I want to leave you with a question. If a person looks normal, sounds convincing, and knows exactly how to earn trust, what should matter more, appearance or behavior? Because Bundy didn't succeed by force alone. He succeeded because people assumed danger would be obvious. So here's my question to you. What warning signs do you think society still ignores today? The kind that lets predators move freely until it's too late. If this story made you think, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more documented cases from death row history, subscribe to Crime Record and turn on notifications.